In this video, we're going to talk about statutory construction in Philippine law, a full guide designed for law students and bar reviewees. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the rules, principles, and examples you need to master this topic for your exam. So let's start with the definition. Statutory construction is the process of interpreting and applying the law to specific cases. The main goal is to ascertain the legislative intent and ensure that the law is applied according to its purpose and spirit. Philippine courts emphasize that interpretation should neither distort nor nullify the law, but should give the effect to the intention of the legislature. As the Supreme Court stated in Tanyada versus Angara, the fundamental aim of statutory construction is to give effect to the legislative intent, provided it does not contravene the Constitution or public policy. Now, why is statutory construction so important? First, it ensures consistency. It provides a framework for interpreting laws so that similar cases are treated similarly. Second, it resolves ambiguities. Laws may have unclear language, and statutory construction helps clarify these ambiguities. Third, it upholds legislative intent. It ensures that the application of the law aligns with its purpose. And finally, it prevents judicial overreach. Court interpret laws but do not create them, and statutory construction maintains this balance. Let's move on to the primary rule, the literal or plain meaning rule. The starting point in statutory construction is the ordinary meaning of the words used by the legislature. When the words are clear and unambiguous, the court must apply the law as written. For example, if a statute says no person shall drive motor vehicles on sidewalks, the literal interpretation would prohibit cars, trucks, and motorcycles. But bicycles may not be included if we stick to the plain meaning of motor vehicles. In Gonzalez versus Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office, the Supreme Court applied the literal meaning because the words were clear. The key principle here is that courts must avoid adding, omitting, or modifying language that the legislature deliberately used. However, sometimes a literal reading may lead to absurd, unjust, or unintended results. That's when courts use secondary or purposive rules. The first is the mischief rule or teleological approach. This focuses on the problem or mischief the law was designed to remedy. For instance, if a law penalizes vehicles on sidewalks, a literal reading might exclude scooters, but purposive construction would include scooters to protect pedestrians. In De Leon versus Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court applied this purposive approach to prevent an interpretation that would defeat the law's objective. Another approach is looking at historical or legislative intent. This involves legislative history, committee reports, debates, or explanatory notes to understand what lawmakers intended. This is especially important when the statute is ambiguous or silent on a particular issue. Philippine courts also rely on canons of statutory construction to guide interpretation. One example is ejusdem generis, which means of the same kind. When a law lists specific items followed by general terms, the general terms are limited to the same class. For example, if a law prohibits cars, trucks, motorcycles, and other vehicles, The term other vehicles would include vehicles similar to cars, trucks, and motorcycles, like buses or vans. In Heirs of Lim versus Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court applied this rule to interpret other vehicles consistently with the specific items listed. Another canon is expressio unius est exclusio alterius, which means the express mention of one thing exclude others not mentioned. For instance, if a statute exempts books, school supplies, and uniforms from taxes, computers or calculators are not exempt. In Development Bank of the Philippines versus Court of Appeals, the court upheld this principle. Nocitur a sucis, another canon, means that a word is known by the company it keeps. So if a statute refers to murder, homicide, and assault, the term assault should be interpreted in the context of criminal law, not civil law. The Supreme Court applied this in People versus Davis. Redendo singula singulis is the principle that general provisions should be applied to each specific case individually. If a law provides a general rule for the sale of goods, it should be applied separately to each type of good, considering the unique characteristics of each. And in pari materia means that statutes on the same subject should be interpreted together to ensure consistency. For example, labor laws addressing similar rights should be harmonized to avoid contradictory interpretations, as seen in Philippine Judges Association versus Prado. Example, if two laws address labor rights, they should be read together to harmonize their provisions and to avoid contradictory interpretations. There are also special principles in Philippine statutory construction. Penal laws must be strictly construed, while beneficial or remedial laws are liberally interpreted in favor of public interest. Repeal by implication is disfavored and applies only when there's clear conflict. New laws are generally prospective unless expressly retroactive, a key principle in criminal law known as pro reo. And finally, laws in pari materia must be read together to avoid contradictions. So let's apply these principles with a practical example. Suppose the law says no person shall drive any car, truck, motorcycle, or other vehicle on the sidewalk. Literally, cars, trucks, and motorcycles are banned, but bicycles are unclear. Considering the purpose of the law to protect pedestrians, courts may include bicycles, e-scooters, or other similar vehicles. Applying ejusdem generis, other vehicle would include only vehicles similar to cars, trucks, and motorcycle. This shows how literal, purposive, and canon-based interpretation work together in practice. In conclusion, statutory construction is a fundamental aspect of legal interpretation in the Philippines. By understanding and applying principles, canons, and jurisprudence, courts and students alike can ensure that laws are interpreted in a manner consistent with legislative intent, promoting justice and upholding the rule of law. All right. If you like this video and found it helpful for your studies or bar review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more legal guides and exam tips. Daghang salamat.